Hi everyone, Dr. Carin here. I hope everyone is safe and doing well. So it is today, Good Friday, April 10th, and we're going to be talking about seasonal allergies. So clarifying seasonal sniffles. I'm going to guess that there might be a few of you who also have some allergy symptoms right now. So hopefully this is helpful to you today. So we are definitely in allergy season already. It's full blown. These days, pollen counts already pretty high, and unfortunately, we're just getting started. Probably pollen count's going to be high for even the next 6 months or so, right into the fall. Right now, it's mostly pollen from trees. Earlier in the summer, it's going to be more like grass, and then later ragweed probably towards the fall. So we're just getting started. So I'm hoping that I can give you a few little tips on based on what I'm doing for my allergies that can help right away, but also months ahead as well. I know for the Pacific Northwest, where we are in BC in the Washington State area, basically for the past 6 months, we've been looking forward to this part of the year when the weather gets sunny and beautiful and the garden isn't mushy. But just when it starts to feel warmer, that's when we're reminded about our allergies, right? So today I'm going to be talking about where hay fever comes from, and then share what I'm doing for my allergies in the short term, but also long term. If you're just joining us now, hi, welcome. If you're having allergy symptoms right now, let me know what symptoms you're having. I'd like to know. All right. So if you've been experiencing seasonal allergies, if this is something that's been going on for you, year after year, like it is for me, you probably know what it's like to sort of almost like daydream about living in a sterile bubble, or you might be that person who notices dust on every surface. Maybe you know what it's like to feel like you need to sleep in a very particular position so you can breathe properly at night. If you know what I'm talking about, please give me a heart or a thumbs up. Jess says, runny nose, itchy throat. Yes, I understand that it can be so annoying throughout the day. And unfortunately, even though allergies aren't contagious, they can really impact our day-to-day lives. And in my opinion, I think seasonal allergies are actually an indicator of our overall health. So it's something that I definitely want to make sure that we're not ignoring or minimizing those symptoms, and we're not just saying it's just allergies, and kind of brushing it under the rug. But I know right now, I'm sure everyone is being extra diligent about monitoring for cold and flu symptoms and not going out grocery shopping if you have any of those symptoms. But for sure, it's sometimes you feel like you have to tell everyone in the grocery store, right? It's just allergies. Give me a heart if you know what I'm talking about. I know that can be really tricky right now. So I'm going to just start here with what are allergies, what's happening there. So obviously, with an allergy, your immune system, of course, is there to protect us, identify what's harmful, identify what's not, and then try to keep those invaders out of our body. But with an allergy, that immune system actually has a strong reaction to something that's not typically harmful, and that isn't harmful for most people. And the reaction itself can range from being mildly annoying to even life-threatening. In the case of hay fever, it really can impact our day-to-day work, sleep, and even energy levels. So Erica is saying runny nose, continual draining the sinuses. Oh my gosh, yes, I understand that for sure. And this can, of course, be when you're outside, but also, a little technical difficulty here. Here we go. But this could be, inside at night when you're trying to sleep as well. So some of the common symptoms I hear about, like, Jess and Erica mentioned the runny nose, congestion, itchy eyes can be an issue as well. Even shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, that postnasal drip can cause some of that dry cough. Certainly fatigue, and with the congestion you can even have headaches as well, that sinus congestion. So are there any other symptoms that I'm missing? If there's other symptoms you've experienced, please write them in the comments. Of course, allergies are super common, hay fever particularly. Estimates are about 1 in 5 people have hay fever. And it appears that allergies just in general are actually increasing in rate. And there's a few thoughts about why this is the case. You've probably heard of the hygiene hypothesis, where the thought is that compared to previous generations, we lack the exposure to infectious agents like bacteria, viruses, gut parasites early in life. And without that exposure, we don't get the conditioning the immune system needs, and the immune system ends up making mistakes about, is this a harmful food? Is this pollen? Is this an invading germ? You may have heard of the term Th2 shift, but that's essentially that part of the immune system that when it's activated, it causes all these symptoms that we recognize as allergies. Another possible contributor to more people having hay fever is climate change and warmer climate. That means higher pollen count, maybe even longer allergy season being longer, so more exposure generally. And then the other part that I will touch on today as well is indoor air quality is increasingly an issue. An environmental working group says that indoor air is at least twice as polluted as outdoor air. Of course, the indoor air has the allergens like dust and dander, but also the pollutants that we get from our upholstery and cleaners and things like that. So the people that tend to react to pollen in seasonal allergies, we also tend to respond or react, unfortunately, to some of these allergens and pollutants from the indoor air as well. So that could be contributing to the overall load. And of course, when we're talking about what can we do about it, we can't do too much now about how we grew up and the exposures at that time, but we can do some things to reduce the exposure now and to support their immune system. So here are some of the things that I'm doing. So the first thing that I wanted to mention was just rinsing away some of those allergens that our nasal passages help to filter out. So they're not getting inside the body, but they do get trapped in the nasal passages. And when they're just sitting there, of course, our immune cells may be triggered to continue to react to those. So if we can rinse those off with, there's different nasal washes and rinses. I use a neti pot to just gently wash away those allergens. This is good to do when you're just if you've just been outside, maybe working in the garden or something, and then coming inside. Or I do this also after I've been cleaning or dusting the house. I can almost feel the kind of irritation in my sinuses, and I use the neti pot to rinse that out. If you're not familiar with the neti pot, this is my neti pot right here. It's just like a tiny little teapot. But you're putting a solution, usually of a saline solution. I like to add baking soda in there as well. And you're just using that warm water and irrigating your nasal passages, essentially putting the spout right against one of the nostrils, and it comes out the other nostril. Obviously, you're doing this over a sink. If you're interested in finding out more about how to actually do this, do let me know. But if you actually get a neti pot, there's instructions and different solutions, and you can actually buy the solutions from the pharmacy as well. The thing I would mention is making sure, of course, because you're using this water in your mucous membrane. So it's really, really, really important that it's clean. The water, the container, all of it is clean. So for the water, for example, I boil, if you're going to use tap water, boil the water for a few minutes. Make it sterile water. Make sure you rinse with that boiling water, rinse out the container that's already been cleaned, and then put your salt and a little bit of baking soda in there, and make sure that the amounts, I use about 1/4 teaspoon of the salt and 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda or so, but adjust it so that it's comfortable. I find that it's really, really soothing to the mucous membranes. It feels like everything kind of calms down after I use that. The humidity feels really nice on your mucous membranes as well. What I would mention though is that if you can't breathe through your nose, if it's completely congested, the neti pot isn't going to force your nasal passages to open by any means. It's much more gentle than that. So if it is totally congested, I would use peppermint oil in a diffuser, or drink peppermint tea and just hold that steam close to your face, and that humidity and the peppermint will help to open up the nasal passages. So this is not for opening the nasal passages, but just to wash out those allergens that are sitting there on the mucous membranes, and then just really soothe those that lining in your nose as well. It feels really nice. Make sure that also you let your sinuses drain completely after you do this. So after you do this, I like to do a couple little yoga poses or a little stretching, and after I do that, I just notice there's a couple more drips of water that come out. So make sure that there's good drainage after that. So if you're coming in from working outside or being outside, that's a good time to do it. Or if you're just cleaned up inside and you want to just get the dust and other allergens off of your mucous membranes, neti pot or nasal rinse is a nice, easy thing that you can do with that. Any questions about the neti pot, let me know. I will definitely try to write some of those steps down in the summary. So I mentioned indoor air quality before being, it's estimated about 2 to 5 times worse than outdoor air. And this is tricky for us who have seasonal allergies, because right now, with the pollen count being quite high, we were a little bit probably hesitant to open windows too much. So this is a little bit of a tricky balance. I do think that it's still important to get good circulation and ventilate, because that indoor air is polluted compared to the outdoor air. So trying to time that, generally I try to do that more right now when the pollen count is high, closer to the afternoon. But that also depends on whether, if it's a really windy day or windy time, I would just wait until it calms down a little bit. And of course, the other things that you can do is just making sure you're cleaning equipment like vacuum cleaners and air filters and furnaces. Their filters are all cleaned. You're replacing furnace filters, for example, typically every 3 to 6 months. See if you can upgrade them next time you replace them to catch even smaller particles. If you're wondering about indoor air quality and why it's so polluted, there's a lot of different things that can come into play here, but there's accumulation of things like flame retardants, formaldehydes, perfluorinated chemicals like Teflon, fragrances and cleaning products, personal care products. Obviously, we're hopefully trying to change these to more natural ingredients and less toxic ingredients, but we all have these kinds of things coming from our carpets, for example. And then of course mold and mildew and dust and dander is just part of the regular dust and air in the indoors. So trying to clean those out as much as possible. And especially right now, if you're having trouble with sleep, I would really concentrate your efforts around your bed. Vacuuming the carpets, dusting the area with a damp cloth like windowsills, nightstands, headboards. I have some more information about indoor air quality. I have an article about that. I'll put a link to that in the comments later on, so you can take a look at that. Some other things that you can do here. But I think that indoor air quality is a real factor because it will trigger our immune system while we're at home, while we're sleeping, and activate your immune system. And then we're exposed to pollen on top of that, then it's going to be even more hyperreactive. So if you can just reduce that load when we're indoors, I think that can be really helpful. I've certainly found it helpful for me. Okay, so the next part is more working internally now. So we've talked about using a nasal wash and getting the allergens off the mucous membranes. And then talking about just getting the allergens away from our indoor environment. Now I'm going to talk more about internal for inside our body, so balancing our immune system. So in Chinese medicine, we know that the digestive system is the foundation of our immune system. And so supporting our gut health can have a huge impact on allergies. And remember that every time we eat, our immune system is essentially exercised to identify between a harmful substance versus a helpful food. So the digestion is really that intersection between our internal environment and external environment. So the immune system really gets a lot of exercise there. And if we can help with just making it really clear what's harmful and what's helpful, that can be really helpful in calming down the immune reaction at the gut. So first thing that I would recommend when it comes to immune supportive, balancing the immune system for allergies is immune supportive food. So the first one that I'm going to mention is quercetin-rich foods. I don't know if anybody has heard about quercetin before. It's a flavonoid, an antioxidant from fruits and vegetables, and it tends to be fruits and vegetables that are a dark, rich green color, as well as colorful fruits and vegetables. Quercetin is really well known to help our prevent the release of histamine from our immune cells. So this is where things like blackberries, blueberries, elderberries, capers, the red onions, apples, radish leaves have lots of quercetin in them. And generally, you can tell these are all very colorful fruits and vegetables. This is a really nice way to just get a whole bunch of that antioxidant into our diet for multiple reasons, but particularly when we're dealing with seasonal allergies, we want to get as much as possible. The other foods that I would definitely ramp up right now is fish or fish oil with the rich in omega-3s. So fish oil helps the immune system make more appropriate responses, right? So that it's not just reacting to everything. It's well known to be an anti-inflammatory as well. So fish oil, of course, you can get from salmon and other fish, but you can also take it as a supplement. I like cod liver oil as it just naturally has some vitamin D and A in it as well, which is also good for your immune system. So I like that choice. Of course, with any supplements, make sure you talk to your naturopath and make sure it makes sense for you. My second point here with immune balancing is more about the bugs in your gut. So following a diet that helps to promote good bacteria and not promote bad bacteria. So I'm going to start with avoid feeding the bad bugs. And I'm going to use just the word bugs because it's not just bacteria. We're talking about also things like yeast. So first thing is avoiding excess sugar and refined carbohydrates, as these ones can essentially promote those bad bugs to grow in the gut. From an organic acids test result, I've seen that my gut candida or gut yeast was quite high. And I've definitely noticed that difference treating that my allergies have calmed down from that time. What happens is that a lot of these bad bugs can make these endotoxins that trigger the damage to the gut lining, and that can trigger an immune reaction. So you hear us talking a lot about avoiding excess sugar and avoid refined carbohydrates, but in this particular case with seasonal allergies, that can make a huge difference. And I'm going to put one more on top of that. If you tend to have a lot of phlegm and mucus, a lot of congestion, also try avoiding dairy for a week or two and see if that makes a big difference. It certainly does for me. So for a lot of people, just avoiding sugar, refined carbs, and dairy can make a huge difference, just that by itself. Even if you don't have lactose intolerance, that can make a big difference. So that's something that you might want to try out. I will be diving into a lot of different ways that you can do what I call a spring cleaning of the body in the upcoming masterclass on April 25th, where we're going to talk a lot more about how we can make sure that there's less of a burden of inflammation and triggers of our immune system. So look out for that April 25th. Lastly, avoiding food sensitivities. So food sensitivities are slow or delayed immune reactions to food. And this can be identified by an elimination diet or an elimination diet that's informed by a food sensitivity test. Definitely, I highly recommend working with a naturopath to figure out those foods for you if seasonal allergies are a recurrent issue for you. I'll share a story. I had one patient who came in with his eyes that were so swollen that were almost shut. He was unable to breathe through his nose. He worked outside. This was in the early summer, I believe. He worked outside, so we couldn't really take away the allergen exposure. I believe it was to grass. And his symptoms didn't improve with antihistamine use. And of course, because he couldn't breathe, he couldn't work properly, he couldn't sleep, and he had very low energy. We removed gluten based on his food sensitivity test results and other gluten-containing grains. Added a couple simple nutrients like vitamin C. I saw him 2 weeks later, and I almost didn't recognize him because the swelling was all gone that I could see. And he had told me at that time that in about 4 days after he started that protocol, 80% of those symptoms went away, and he was able to sleep and had more energy. And this was while he continued to work outside. So really looking at what the foods are that's already triggering your gut can make a huge difference. And for me, this dairy is one of those foods. But for him, it was gluten and wheat and other gluten-containing grains. So trying to identify what is triggering your immune system, whether that's a particular food that you're eating, or is there some sort of gut lining issue or a gut flora issue, so meaning the bacteria balance in your gut might be off. That's a really important place to look when you're looking at long-term improvements with your seasonal allergies. So to review, I've mentioned the nasal rinse or the neti pot to wash away the allergens and calm down the mucous membranes. Every year I forget about this in the beginning of the allergy season because I always forget that I get seasonal allergies until I have it. But then whenever I remember to do the neti pot, I always feel like, it just feels so much nicer. And everything, my symptoms tend to calm down after that. And then, of course, to look at your indoor air quality and see how we can improve that. So just we're reducing that overall load on our immune system, especially at night. So opening the windows whenever you can, generally towards the end of the day is better for pollen, but also just make sure that you're off-gassing things, the indoor pollutants out of the house, and then trying to reduce the amount of chemicals and things like that from your cleaners. And then, of course, supporting our own immune system. So starting with colorful quercetin-rich foods, and then those omega-3s from either fish oil or fish itself, avoiding sugar and refined carbohydrates, and anything that feeds that bad gut bugs. Dairy is something that I would consider if you are having that congestion, and then avoiding your food sensitivities, and that if you know what they are, or trying to identify them, if it's something that's a recurring issue. I think that can be really helpful. I hope that this was helpful information for you. This is, as always, is not medical advice. Obviously, it's not personalized advice for you, but hopefully this information gives you a place to look a little bit further and discuss with your practitioners about whether these could be helpful for you. Please share this video with anyone you think could use it, and do let us know if there are other topics that you'd like us to talk about. Tomorrow, Dr. Vanessa is going to be doing a masterclass on cardiovascular risks and living a heart-centered life through the Brio Living lens. And I will be back on Monday to talk about non-dairy foods for healthy bones. So join me in the kitchen for that on Monday. All right. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you on Monday. Have a good weekend. Bye.